Happy Pride Month. I am so humbled and honored that you would ask me to create a video thanking you and congratulating you on the long journey, the struggle, 50 years of working tirelessly to make sure that we all have an opportunity and access. You know, my involvement with the LGBT community goes way back to activities at San Diego State University in the 70s and the 80s. And my involvement on the school board in trying to create great policies and programs for young people who were struggling with their identity and trying to make sure that we all felt safe. You know, I can remember all of the attacks on individuals in the various portions of San Diego and us coming together for various rallies to say, wait a minute, this isn't fair. This needs to be addressed. And we need to, as the public, step up and be involved and concerned. So my journey in this arena of social justice and equality is a long journey, a journey that began with my father when he was threatened by the Klan when I was just a little kid. And his passion and desire for social justice and equality and dignity and pride in himself. Those kinds of things are embedded in me as a kid. And as a result, come out when I have to fight for justice and fight for equality, because I know just how important it is and what happens when you are denied that opportunity. So that when I went to the legislature, I went there fully aware that I had a responsibility to make sure that every child and every person in this nation has a chance for equal opportunity and access. And I've tried to reflect that in my life and in the things that I do at the Capitol that make a difference for so many people. You know, we've done a number of pieces, whether it's racial profiling, whether it's dealing with the issues of courts and social justice, whether making our prisons be more rehabilitative versus just punishment places, to rebuild lives and to bring back our children, our families better than when they went in. And we're still fighting that battle each and every day right now. But I was grateful that I've always had you as a partner, somebody who understood the challenge, understood what we were trying to accomplish, and worked alongside of me to make a difference. This past year, when we passed AB 392, it was a difficult bill to pass because people didn't want to believe that there was actual police brutality of that level, that we needed to really define when lethal force should be used. Most folks thought everybody's reasonable, that we all understand that that is a force that should never be used unless it is absolutely necessary and that it actually saves people's lives. It was hard to tell folks that because many had never had the experience that I've had and that many of you've had in dealing with law enforcement that sometimes is very narrow in its perspective of us. Not all of them, but many of them, and just enough to make a difference, just enough to have a negative impact on communities. And so it was difficult constantly telling the stories of my son and my grandson and others who have been negatively impacted by it. But it became so essential and so necessary that I do that, driven by my passion for justice and equality, and surrounded by the support of you and all of those social justice advocates to try to make a difference. We are still struggling with those issues today. And as I look back on the last year, I realized that what we did together in 392 was forward thinking, that others now are attempting to copy what we've done. But that's okay because they need to. They need to make the standards of when our law enforcement uses lethal force a standard that is a statewide standard and a national standard. And we're still working on other things that will make a difference. But it's been a journey. It's been quite a journey, and you've been there with me, and I appreciate that so much. This year is no exception. You know, every time I turn around when I think I'm gonna take a deep breath and relax, somebody brings me something new. Somebody brings me something that obviously that they feel only I can do, and I think others can, but they say, no, this has to be what we want you to do. And that was basically ACA 5, which was the dealing with the issue of affirmative action and equal opportunity and access. And once again, I said to myself, how are people going to believe and understand how important it is to have opportunity and how unequal the world is? And simply saying to us, oh, everybody can be free now. You can be judged by the content of your character versus the color of your skin. That I heard people say over and over at the Capitol as a reason why they should not vote for ACA 5. And it was interesting because I had to remind them that if they really, really understood that quote that King made, they would know that it was made in a dream speech, the I Have a Dream speech, and that it was aspirational. It is what we want to achieve. But meanwhile, while we're on the road, we have to deal with the injustices and the inequality and the lack of opportunity for so many young people in this nation. And we have to be the ones to fight to make it happen. And so I was wondering, I said, how am I going to explain this to those whose lives have not been impacted as mine have, been impacted by the lack of opportunity, by poor quality education, and yet still wanting to be able to move forward with my life and have a chance to always go back and rebuild and to be a part of the system? How am I going to explain that to people? And then George Floyd died. George Floyd died while everybody in America watched. And they watched it over and over again. And it became a reminder. Yes, we believe that everyone should be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. We believe that in our hearts. But the reality is that does not exist today. And we have to do something. We must do something immediately to make sure that everyone in this country has a sense of opportunity and fairness and justice. And that requires us to do the hard work. And so when I went back to Sacramento after a break, ACA 5 was on my heart and my mind. And it became on the heart and minds of so many others because they realized that the stories we had been telling, the inequality that they had not experienced in terms of white privilege, that they had not had that kind of challenge, is a reality. It's a reality for too many of us. And when those folks took to the streets and raised the issue that Black Lives Matter, it was clear that those lives had not mattered, that there had never been a reckoning, there had never been anyone who paid the price for such injustice that had been done to us, and that the society still had not gotten to the point where we were beginning to accept each other as equal, that we still had a long way to go and a long journey and a hard journey to get there. And so ACA 5 passed, and so we're now putting it on the ballot in November. And that's a new challenge that's there, because once again, we have to convince folks that we must create equal opportunity and access for everyone, that we have a unique responsibility to do that. And those of us who've been in the struggle, LGBTQ communities, as well as African Americans and Latino communities, realize that this is a journey not just for them, but it's a journey for this nation. You know, when I look and see the hatred that people have for each other, the fact that I even have to say Black Lives Matter, because obviously it has not mattered, that in itself brings us and pushes us forward even harder to say this is not just a work for African Americans, it's not just a work for Latinos, it's a work for all of us. And those who have benefited from the system have a unique responsibility to try to deal with the issue of injustice and to make sure that someone else gets the benefit as well. And that's why I'm excited as I look and see the protests in the streets, as I see the rallies and the things that are there. I see all kinds of folks there. I see everyone who's saying, I want a better California. I want a better United States. I want a better world, because now this challenge is around the world. I want to be able to reach out to everyone and say, you know what, wherever you live, we're going to level this playing field and you're going to have an equal opportunity and access. That you should not be in the streets crying for something that you should have been born with, which is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You should not be across the world trying to think of things that you can do to change your world, because that has already happened for you and for everyone that's there. We have a tremendous challenge ahead. But I'm always told folks that I'm always excited when there is a challenge, because at least we are recognizing the fact that there's work to be done and there's a challenge ahead. But equally important, we are up to the challenge. We've been there. We've been on the firing lines. We've been in the places where others have not been. And yet, in spite of all of that, we are still standing. We're still here. We're still fighting for rights and justice. We have not given up. And as long as we don't give up, we will be in the position to win. You know, I'm always telling folks when they say, they always say, well, don't count Weber out because, she somehow or another pulls the rabbit out the hat, or she's got something somewhere. And I always tell them that the only thing I have is the internal strength and belief of my ancestors, that my parents came here with very little. And a man who could barely read, my father, took a long journey on a train, who could barely read the signs, because he was fleeing from the Klan and coming to California to make a better life for his children. But he did not live in fear. He lived with the knowledge that he could do whatever was necessary to make his life better. And so as a result, as children, every 4 years, we packed ourselves in our station wagon, all 10 of us, 8 children to adults, and traveled across country, traveled to Arkansas to not only to be with family, but to also remind those who hated my father, who wanted to hurt him, that he was not afraid, that he'd come home. And he would always come home when he wanted to, because no one was going to run him out of his land and his heritage simply because they had hatred in their hearts. And so I learned very early that this battle may be long and hard, but we're up to the task. And if we're persistent and continue to fight, we will win. And that's what we have to remember. I think you remember that in terms of Pride Month, and we will all continue to remember all the struggles that have been there, all those who fought for justice and equality, all those who wanted to make a difference in the world. And they made a difference. They made a difference in your life and in my life. And we stand on the shoulders of those who have tremendous legacies, tremendous things that say we can move forward. And as every day when I tell folks, I've seen fear. I know what it looks like. And therefore, because I know it, I know that I don't have it anymore, that it is not in my heart to fear anybody, but to always push forward. Because when you do, you will push forward and you'll bring others with you and you will win. So this is Pride Month. And I always think of pride as something that everybody needs. No one needs to be ashamed of who they are. All of us have to be proud of what we were given in this world, whether it was parents who helped us get to where we are, whether it's a community, whether it's a friend, whether it's a church. We should all be proud of the fact that we have survived, that we not only have just merely survived, but we have grown and we have developed. And we can transfer that strength and that growth to our children, and they believe in us. My grandson said to me one time, he said, "Hey, Grandma," he said, "you're two different people." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Sometimes you're Grandma." And I don't know what that means, I guess because they have fun at my house. He said, "And then the other times you're that other lady." I said, "Who is that other lady?" And he thought, and he looked around, he says, "She is powerful." And I thought, what a wonderful tribute from my grandson to say, she is powerful. This other lady that I am, who is not Grandma, but this other lady, this legislator, this community activist, he's saying, she is powerful. And I said, "Do you like it when she's powerful?" He says, "Oh, yes." And I told him, that's because you will be powerful too, that you already have the power. You just have to bring it out and let it shine and make sure that what I've done is transferred to you. It is extremely important as we reach Pride Month that I once again say to you, thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you for loving me. Thanking you for helping me. Thanking you for being my inspiration, for allowing me to stand on your shoulders sometimes and even to cry on your shoulders at times. But most importantly, to be a support system, to always be there, the wind beneath my wings, the community that I fight so hard for. Oftentimes people in Sacramento say, aren't you afraid of these things? And I said, one of the things I've learned over the years is that my community loves me because I love them. And I spend all of my time trying to make their lives better, because when their life is better, so is mine. And we have that mutual love, that mutual respect for each other. So once again, I am so proud that you asked me just to simply say something that might be of inspirational or important to you. But I want you to know that I'm always here. I'm always thinking about you, always fighting for the issues that you believe in, and always relying on you to stand tall and to stand strong with me, because together we will survive and we will make it. And if we haven't learned anything at all in this whole pandemic, in this whole issue with the presidents dividing and what have you, is that when we are unified, when we're one in our perspective, we fight hard and we win. So happy Pride.